Herman, from a Russian point of view, you are one of the big gas producers in the world. Is it good news what you just heard, or how do you feel about it?
Well, I can draw some historical parallels, somewhat different from what Gerard has expressed here, perhaps. Well, you know, Klaus, the Stone Age ended not because they didn't have any more stones around. People just started to melt metal, and it's not a given fact that those gas-rich countries will be rich in the 21st century. It's not a given that because of lack of hydrocarbons, you know, maybe oilers and gas people will be heartened and will like to hear this, but most countries will not like it very much. So I think we'll shift to the age of hydrocarbon lacking industries much earlier than oilers and gas people would envisage. We should remember that's the time for new technologies to advance, and the lack of hydrocarbons does mean the doomsday and end of the world and lack of energy in the world. That's very typical for Russia too, I think. Russia should also understand this. That's the first thing. We're too much linked with production of hydrocarbon materials. 25% of GDP has to do with production of oil and gas in this country. 50% of GDP has to do with the raw materials production, you know. We ought to, under the circumstances of the 21st century, very quickly diversify our economy, diversify exports, and therefore acquire new knowledge in order to establish service-related industries. As it happened in many industries, telecommunications, software programming, and so on and so forth. It already happened. Therefore, I tend to believe that still it's better to allow to overspeed you, not those who develop something from Mother Earth, but who develop something out of knowledge. And that's the trend mark of the 21st century, the trend mark of the 21st century, that the means of production would blend with main producer would be brains of human being. That would equal all resources all over the world, Africa, India, China, developing countries, developed countries, you name it. They will be on the same plane. And the factors of existence, abundance of those resources will be therefore secondary. The key resource would be mental capacity of man. That's the sign of the 21st century. Those countries who understand that, who will be forthcoming in this regard, they are going to win to our country.
And welcoming people into their organizations. Those are going to be the winners in the future, no doubt about it.
Any other comment? Jim?
It's as good to note that China and India each have over 300,000 students studying abroad at university level every year, 100,000 each in the United States. By comparison, the United States has 13,000 students studying in China and 3,100 in India. Also, 35% of the Chinese and Indian students are studying engineering and related subjects. And so it's a real challenge to us in terms of what's been put forward, that our game is being taken away from us unless we revamp our system and pay a little more attention to the training that we're giving our young people.
Tom, the other.
Just to make one comment that goes back to what Herman has said in terms of the competitiveness of this country and this region. I think, indeed, this is something we have to see, that with the facts that Jim Wolfensohn had alluded to in terms of what other emerging markets and countries are doing in universities, in A-grade education, partly also in vocational training, this will be a very strong additional competitive factor for Russia and for the countries of the former Soviet Union. I think looking at the past 20 years, it's probably right to say that this element has been partly neglected, so that indeed if Russia wants to be at the edge of technologies, at the edge of innovation, not only it needs to invest into high-tech and into state-of-the-art universities, but also very basically into a good school and vocational training system.
Talents and skills are also necessary to build up a banking system, and that's another issue which we should shortly discuss here in this session. But before I just see, Jamie, you had a point.
Yeah, just a quick comment about talent. And I'm going to speak about the United States for a second. The United States, I was listening to Jim talk about the 300,000 kids studying in the United States. They used to study there, and we used to want to keep the best and brightest, and now we're making them go back to their country. We've adopted different immigration policies. So I think it's not just developing them, but the nations that can attract, retain the people who want to stay there. I believe that if you now graduate in Canada with a college degree and an advanced degree, you're automatically a citizen. So we're all going to be competing with countries that are very want to keep the people, and as opposed to push them out.
Banks and skills are interrelated, and so is the question whether what will happen with the Russian financial system in the next 2 to 5 years. And we are now doing a poll. You all have a device in the side pocket of your seats, and what we want to know, how do you feel? Will the Russian financial system in the next 2 to 5 years have fast growth, stagnation, or crisis? And then I will ask Hermann to comment on the result. Can you take out your device? I think it takes some minutes. When you hear a noise, then we are ready to go. And please be reminded, 1 is fast growth, 2nd is stagnation, and 3rd is crisis. Now, vote. We'll have the results in some seconds. Hermann, how do you comment?
Now, as regards the financial sector, I'm rather optimistic than with respect to oil and gas sector. Without money, nobody has learned so far to produce GDP. 2 figures I could cite in this regard from memory. I might be mistaken, macroeconomist, I'm sorry for that. And complicated derivatives will be on the rise. They need to be regulated, of course. You need to apply pressure, but they will be on the rise. That's objective reality. You cannot get away from that. You have to hedge risks. You have to quest for money equivalent to non-economy currencies related, and financial instruments will be on the rise, and primarily this will occur in the countries with insufficiently developed financial systems. Russia being one of those countries, I believe in the coming years still we will witness growth. Sometimes this growth could be coupled with high tempo and low tempo sometimes, but I believe that behind this 33 and 3%, you know, this is a round number, this is the prevalence there.
Joe.
I would very much like to support what Herman just said. First of all, whether it's fast growth or growth, but it will be growth. But it is important, two things. One is, we heard before that taking deposits and lending money. That is one piece of banking. But we should also not underestimate that we have moved from a bank-based system to a market-based system. And to correct that would be absolutely counterproductive to prosperity and growth in the world. And that's why deepening financial markets and also building up capital markets for longer-term financing and money markets for short-term financing is crucial. And it should also be aligned with the real economy, not a bubble where you artificially create a financial center which would probably at the end have some very difficult impacts on the real economy and on the safety of Russia. But if you do it in parallel with the real economy, with the growth, with the potential, but also going into more modern financial products, because I disagree with some of the statements not made at this panel but in other panels that financial innovations do not contribute to the real economy. Hedging mechanisms, capital market products, absolutely needed. That you bring investors money which are not willing to just place their deposits in banks for a lot of reasons, but directly into the economy. And here the system where we have a disintermediation between the two sides is crucial. And I think that is exactly where some banks now have started in Russia, domestic banks, to build it up. And I think that's a tremendously important impact. But as we heard this morning, in terms of companies complaining about shortage of skilled labor, that is key. We need much more, and I think we have to start recruiting people from colleges, from universities, training them. Russians are very strong in mathematics, they are very strong in sciences, and to use that also for building up financial sector will be crucial. And let me say one final point. I fully agree with what has been said about regulation, but there is a trade-off, and I think emerging markets will particularly be affected. So I think the question of how much and how fast is in that context very, very important, and that should be borne in mind, and primarily the head of the World Bank, Bob Sulik, is alluding to that more and more often. And I think we should not forget that we create a level playing field which goes beyond those countries which were so badly affected in the financial crisis.